And there's a lot of headlines in the media with one-liners like 6% commission rule is gone. How's it going, guys? I'm Christopher McGee. I'm the owner of Halcyon Real Estate. I'm affiliated with the Keller Williams Marcus Center in Salt Lake City, Utah here. Today is the 27th of March, 2024. On the 15th of March, a settlement was announced between NAR, the National Association of Realtors, and the plaintiffs against it in a suit that's been going on, getting a lot of media attention. And now that the settlement has been announced, the settlement itself, even though it still has to be approved by a judge, and it likely will be, that has been getting a lot of media attention, and you may have seen a lot of headlines about it. And there's a lot of headlines in the media with one-liners like 6% commission rule is gone. And headlines like that that's misinformation, it's misleading, it's a misrepresentation of the facts. And it's obnoxious for me and other realtors who know what's going on to see, because A, that's not exactly what the lawsuit or settlement was about, nor is it what the result of the settlement actually is. It presupposes that a 6% commission was ever a rule, and it supposes that 6% commission won't be able to happen anymore. None of those things are the case, but I wanted to jump on here, and because I'm a realtor that you know or may find, I just wanted to get out in front of this and be totally transparent about what it all is and what it means for the future of real estate transactions here in Utah. I have read the settlement, all 104 pages of it, although the last half is really redundancies spelled out in appendices, and the 45 or so pages of the meat of the settlement statement really could be contracted to like 5 if we're just looking at what the changes stipulated by the settlement are. Now, if you were under the impression when you were selling a house that 6% commission was required by law, and if you didn't understand that 6% or whatever percent that was negotiated between you and your agent, that the percentage of commission given to the listing brokerage was going to be shared as the buyer agent commission, or BAC, then your realtor was not being sufficiently transparent with you and they weren't doing their job. Now, real estate is governed and regulated differently in different states. Utah does things very wisely. In Utah's Association of Realtors has a forms committee, and that forms committee submits forms to the Division of Real Estate and the Attorney General's office to be approved for use. And to be clear, the Division of Real Estate is not a private entity. The Division of Real Estate is a government oversight committee, obviously overlooking real estate as it's practiced in Utah. So we already have a lot of wise regulation implemented in Utah relative to real estate, but there are a lot of states that don't have nearly the wisdom that we've had in Utah. And what that means is some states will see big changes and maybe panicking right now as a result of this settlement, while Utah is not going to change much at all. In fact, the attorneys representing the plaintiffs in this suit were very strategic in bringing this to court in Missouri, because as real estate regulations goes, Missouri is kind of the Wild West, and in Missouri there are no state-approved forms for agreements between buyers and the agents that they hire, and there has been little to no legal incentive for the agents there, whether representing sellers or buyers, to appropriately represent to them the nature of how their commission is paid and how much it can be. All that said, let's look at this settlement statement and what it means for the future of Utah real estate. So first of all, it begins with this preamble, as all settlements do. I understand, I'm not an attorney, but it goes over a series of whereas, and it's like, since this problem is here and since it's being responded to this way, blah, 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 therefore we have come to this settlement. And I just want to point out something that I found really interesting in that preamble. Early in the preamble, it starts with something along the lines of whereas, well, I'll just read it. Whereas plaintiffs allege that the National Association of Realtors participated in a conspiracy to raise, fix, maintain, or stabilize real estate commissions. And also, whereas the NAR denies these allegations, and whereas that proceeded to a trial, and whereas. And then the 10th whereas states this: whereas the National Association of Realtors believes that it is not liable for the claims asserted and has good defenses to the plaintiff's claims and meritorious summary judgment and post-trial motions, but nevertheless has decided to enter into this settlement agreement to avoid further expense, inconvenience, and the distraction of burdensome protracted litigation. Therefore, in consideration, we've come to this settlement. It was acknowledged by both sides in this case that NAR's claims defending itself against the allegations that were brought to it were actually really solid, and that they just didn't want the inconvenience and expense and burden of this ongoing litigation relative to the allegations placed upon it in this suit. I found that very interesting. And I think in Missouri, the Wild West of real estate, it was probably really easy to find a court full of people really upset with the real estate industry there. Okay, all that said, the settlement comes to what NAR has agreed to pay and what practices NAR has agreed to implement, or change in practices that the NAR has agreed to implement. Some of them are not really changes, it depends on the state, we'll look at it. The payment is just 5 easy payments of $5 million, $197 million, $72 million, $72 million, and $72 million across the course of 4 years. All that comes to $418 million plus whatever interest it accrues. Okay, now subsection H, paragraph 58 of the settlement goes over the practice changes NAR is agreeing to. Number 1, there will be no requirement of cooperative compensation. That's fine. There never was such a requirement, not even if you were going to place your home on the MLS. Now, it's true that realtors looking at the MLS could see posted on there how much BAC or buyer agent commission was being offered associated with the sale of a particular home. And an argument could be made poorly that this therefore forced the seller to contribute the full expected 6% so that a full expected 3% could be given to the buyer agent. But of course, it doesn't force them to do so, and the listing agent should be clear in talking with their client, the seller, that the amount offered to a buyer agent is negotiable. And I just want to tell you from my personal experience, and in the office of 200 or so agents of which I am a part, never have I ever not shown a home to a client who was a buyer because I saw less than 3%, because I saw any amount that I either desired or did not desire offered as buyer agent commission. I've seen 1%, I've seen 0.5%. That has nothing to do with whether I show a home that my clients may find interesting to those clients. I'm a fiduciary. That means I'm legally required to do what is in my client's best interest. Are there agents who don't care about what fiduciary means? Of course. But I will say that the fact that I see 3%, 2.5%, 2.75%, 2%, 1.5%, 1%, 0.5%, I see all of these offered as buyer agent commission. I've even seen 0% before. I've seen not percentages, but small dollar amounts. The fact that I see all of that commonly on the MLS kind of cast shade on the idea that commissions were fixed at 6% and therefore an expected 3% for the buyer agent. Change number 2, no commissions, whether the listing agent's commission or any offered buyer agent commission, will be posted on the MLS. Assuming this settlement is approved by a judge, that should take place this July. Okay, and then that particular requirement of change is then repeated like 3 or 4 times in different ways from different angles, because attorneys just doing their good job making sure that there's not some dumb loophole in what they're trying to get across, right? So that's repeated several times in different ways. It's even said that realtors cannot attempt to circumvent this requirement by creating another platform for everybody to congregate on that shows what BAC is offered. So no BAC offer posted on the MLS or anything that could be created to be like it. That's made super clear. However, it does say that this requirement does not prevent brokerages from posting any offered buyer agent commission upon platforms homes only available within that brokerage or market center. So if I've had the conversation with my sellers as I'm listing their property that this cooperative compensation thing is an option and they agree to offer a certain amount, I can publish that on a website that's only available to my brokerage, but not with any other brokerages that utilize my MLS system. Next change, a buyer agent will now be required by federal law to have a signed written agreement between them and their clients, the buyers, that they do indeed represent this client before they show that client any homes. And that agreement needs to clearly articulate and disclose the ways in which the agent can be paid and the maximum amount that the agent will be able to be paid. Now, it will be a change in Utah that this is a federal legal requirement for us to have that buyer-broker agreement, is what we call it in Utah, for that to be in place and signed before we show you any homes, but it probably should have been happening anyway. And full-on 39 states in America do not have any kind of state-approved form showing the representation between client who's buying and the agent they've chosen to represent them. So for those states, this is going to be a big change. Number 5, the settlement requires that a buyer agent is prohibited from representing that their services are free, which has been a lazy way for buyer agents to communicate the idea that it's entirely possible that you, buyer, will not have to pay me anything because of the practice of cooperative compensation. If I'm being paid a commission that's being shared by the commission that was given to the listing brokerage, then you, Mr. Buyer, do not have to pay me anything. But instead of articulating that clearly, that you don't have to pay me because my payment will be met by what's being shared by the listing brokerage, a lot of buyer agents have simply been saying, using me won't cost you anything because I'm free to you. And that's not quite right, is it? I do offer a service, that service is valuable, and I don't work for free. So buyer agents are now prohibited from representing that their work is going to be given freely unless they actually work for free. Okay, the settlement also requires that a listing agent have a clearly articulated conversation with their clients, the sellers, describing what the practice of cooperative compensation is and obtaining their approval, if any, in offering any buyer agent commission. That should definitely have been happening. And if agents in Utah have been showing their listing clients what's in the contract that they sign in hiring them as agents, then that has been clearly described. Realtors will now be federally required as a result of this settlement to clearly disclose to their clients that their commission is not set by law and is fully negotiable. So my clients and I have had this conversation, which is essentially my commission is entirely negotiable, and if I believe that my value provided to you in the course of helping you through this transaction as a fiduciary provides a value equal to a certain percentage of your home, then that's what I will ask for. And if we can't come to a meeting of the minds and agree on what I'm going to be worth to you, then we split ways and you can find an agent who's going to provide less value and ask for less money, and that's fine. The settlement also requires that agents cannot steer their clients away from homes that do not offer what the agent considers to be a sufficient buyer agent commission. And this is, in my opinion, a strange and redundant agreement to come to because fiduciary and agency law already require this. Finally, the settlement does not prevent offers of buyer agent commission under the practice of cooperative compensation, nor does it prevent sellers from offering buyer concessions and under the umbrella of seller concessions offering a buyer agent commission. And the seller concessions can be posted on the MLS. They just can't specify if within that umbrella there is a buyer agent commission or how much it is. The jury is still out, pun intended, on how exactly that might show up as data on the MLS, but we've got a few months to figure it out, and I'm confident we will. And when we do, I know my clients are going to understand how it works. Okay, that's it. That is all the changes required in the settlement. So what exactly is going to be different in Utah? One, there will be no offer of buyer agent commission posted on the MLS. Real change in Utah, number 2, that buyer broker agreement will have to be signed before a buyer agent can show a buyer any homes. And finally, any offers of buyer agent commission may now show up on the MLS under the umbrella umbrella of seller concessions, but they can't show up specified as buyer agent commission. And that's really it, guys. So there's 3 major changes that I've boiled it down to that'll happen in Utah. If agents in Utah have been doing what they were supposed to according to the regulations that we already have in place, then not a great deal is going to be different for agents and real estate transactions here in Utah in the future. I think really agents just need to be more articulate and clear about how we get paid and what the value we provide to the seller and the buyer really is. All right, that's a bit of a slog for a video, but thank you for watching. If you've watched this far and you have any questions about what any of it means or specific wording in this settlement or anything along those lines, I hope you feel comfortable to reach out to me. I really want full transparency with anybody that I'm working with or anybody who asks questions about it. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.